Yo, Longhairs. Welcome to episode 98 of Let It Ride. Here we talk long hair and business, advocate for hair equality, and celebrate men's long manes with hair whips and high fives. If you're a guy with long hair, you're in the right place. This is El Rubio. I'm here with El Moreno.
Yeah, what up?
At the Longhairs Global Headquarters. And joining us today from Rochester, Minnesota, is a longtime member of the Longhairs community. He's a long hair with a unique physical characteristic that many of us surely take for granted, and who has a valuable and insightful perspective on long hair and what it means. He is one of several men in the community who is visually impaired, in his case, legally blind. And if you think tying your hair up without seeing yourself in the mirror is easy, he's going to tell you what it's really like. We are pumped to have you on the show. Chris Mathews, El Ciego. Welcome to Let It Ride.
What's going on?
Dude.
Awesome. It's so good to be here. I'm so pumped to be on the podcast. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Likewise, man. Long time coming.
Oh, for sure. Long time no see.
So, hey, man, just start us off. Introduce yourself. Where are you now? I already mentioned you're in Minnesota. What are you up to? Maybe just a quick recap on how we got connected.
Sure. So I am 23 and just moved to Minnesota last August. So I've been here not quite a year yet. Kind of getting my roots established here and I've got my own apartment, got a job, and starting to put things together. And as far as being involved in the community, I have been around for a good 2-3 years at this point. Actually, almost longer than that now that I'm thinking about it, probably 3-4. Kind of end of my freshman year of college, I think, is when I found you guys. So I have been active watching the YouTube channel and found the Facebook group a few years ago. And I've been very fortunate to be a part of the community for a long time and long-time user of the shampoo and conditioner. So, that's why this is looking the way it's looking. It's all you guys. So
Does it live up to the epic and ideal titles?
absolutely. I mean, from the remarks I get around, it does. And I can say that the hair feels great, even if I can't see what it looks like all the time. So you guys, you hit the mark there, 100%.
Awesome, dude.
Best news we could hear so far. So tell us just a little bit about your long hair journey. How long have you been growing it out? A little history behind your hair growth. Bring us up to speed on the hair.
Sure. So, kind of has an interesting story tied into it. So my spring semester of my freshman year was awful. And I think it was around that time that a buddy of mine told me he was going to leave and go to another college. That was rough. And so throughout sophomore year, like after this semester kind of kicked everything off, it was just like not great times. I went through a lot personally throughout sophomore year. And I hit this point where a relationship ended and I was just not in the best of mental places. And I was watching videos of people skydiving on YouTube. And I was like, you know what? I need to do something crazy that breaks me out of this funk. I gotta get back to doing life and doing life spectacularly. And so I decided that with my buddy, Derek, that I was going to go skydiving. And he's like, you know what? If you do it, I'll do it. And right before going skydiving was my last haircut. I joked that I wanted to be aerodynamic for skydiving. And so I did. I was growing up, I was kind of ones all around. It was very easy. So, that's kind of how I rocked, 1s, 2s, and the occasional 3 on the buzzer. But that was it. And I went skydiving and it was amazing. But after that, I didn't intentionally start growing out the hair. I worked for a summer and kind of kept putting off going to get it cut and kept putting it off and kept putting it off. And all of a sudden it had been long enough that I started having curls in my hair, which was not something I had ever had before. And I had, it was hitting the ears and kind of hit the awkward stage. I had a bit of an afro going on for quite a while. Went through some really rough haircuts. And that's something I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about as far as my perspective on, navigating the hair world legally blind, because I had some really rough haircuts where they took off a lot more length. I would be well past the shoulders if I knew now what I knew then. But it's been about 3 years, and I'm planning on actually the spot where I am right now, just about shoulder length is where I want to be. So most of everything past this point, come the Great Cut 2024, is going to children with hair loss. So I'm super excited about that. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm really close to being super happy with where I am. I think it's taken a lot to get to this point, but finding the community, finding you guys, and realizing that there are other people, finding good products, you put all of that together with kind of getting my life on a better track, and I think it really all ties in with my hair journey. So that's the believe it or not, that's the short version.
Badass, man. Well summarized, and congratulations on hitting the shoulder. It's a cause for celebration when every man reaches the shoulder length, and especially if you got the curls, it takes a little bit longer.
Right. Yeah. El Sergi also had his video where he talked about that it's more of a battle. And that is very much true. So to all you guys with curls, hang in there. It gets better.
What's been some of the toughest things with the curls for you?
I think just the unpredictability. I mean, there are days where this mess is, out another 2 inches and just doing whatever it wants.
Yeah. A lot of volume, if you will.
Yes. Yeah. The hair gets loud, a lot of volume, but I think that's part of it, the unpredictability. And also from the legally blind standpoint, getting a handle on the way things look. It's not necessarily that I am self-conscious exactly, but not being aware of the way that certain looks are interpreted by the world around you, and trying to kind of get a sense for what different things mean and how to present yourself is something that has to be learned, where I think inherently in a lot of people with vision, obviously you learn by looking around and seeing what people think and the reactions you get walking around. I don't get that. So having to learn that trade has been quite an interesting part of my journey.
Dude, that is fascinating. Now, something I just want to clarify for all the listeners out there, because you've said several times, legally blind. Does that mean you cannot see anything at all? Or what is it like? And is there any way you could kind of walk us through so we could visualize maybe what being in your shoes is like?
Absolutely. So I was born at 26 weeks. I have a condition called retinopathy of prematurity, which is quite a mouthful. So I shortened it to ROP. And essentially what happened is this. So I was born very prematurely. 26 weeks is a touch bit early. And I was put in an incubator to finish developing in hospital. And in that incubator, there was too much oxygen. In the late 90s when I was born, they still were kind of figuring out how to dial in the right amount of oxygen to allow development, but not too much. Unfortunately, I got a little bit too much. And what happened is the blood vessels that were behind my eyes burst. And the way that I explain this to people is if you think of your vision as a movie screen, your retina is the movie screen, your eye is the projector. So most projectors are made of, that canvas, it's a very sturdy material that isn't going anywhere. My movie screen is made of tissue paper. And when my blood vessels behind my eyes burst, the tissue paper was put upon by a bucket of water. And so it caused a lot of tearing. And essentially what I'm left with is I have no ability to look through both eyes at the same time. So I cannot look through both my left and right eye and see one image. I don't even see two images. I can only focus on one or the other. So in my left eye, I have a very central spot of vision that I can use for looking around a room. That's what I'm using right now to kind of try to make sure I'm looking towards the camera, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then with my right eye, I have a very small corner way down that I jokingly call my signature eye, because that's about all it's good for. But I've learned to use, I've learned to navigate the world using a white cane. I read Braille. I learned a lot of things that a lot of people who have no vision would learn, because eventually it's very likely that I'll lose the vision that I have. But that's kind of how my vision works. And it's been very steady. I've been very lucky to have very stable vision. But one other thing I do want to add is that being visually impaired or being legally blind exists on a spectrum. So you can have everything from people who are, let's say you can drive a car with your contacts in, but when you take your contacts out, you might be legally blind. all the way to seeing nothing and every space that you can think of in between those two.
Yeah.
And so I kind of exist, between those points.
Okay.
So go back to your haircut. When you mentioned unique challenges and going through that, knowing now what you knew then, things might have been a little bit different, having a better sense of what you are actually seeing. What were you talking about a couple of minutes ago?
Sure. So I did a lot of research, both, with watching videos that you guys had put out, putting out into the community, because the thing that I kept happening, let me try that again. The thing that I kept happening to me was that I would go in and I tried to kind of put everything on pause with the hairdresser I was talking to and say, hey, look, here's the deal. I said, I can't see what you're doing here, but here's what I want to do. I would even take the hair and using my sense of touch, I would say, okay, about here, is where I would like to cut, because this is where I can feel that the ends are starting to get a little crispy. And this is what I want to take off. I don't want to lose much more length than this if you can avoid it. And I felt like from the videos and things that I had done a really good job of being really clear. But every time I would go in, I would walk out and there was so much more gone than I wanted. And it was really frustrating because I didn't know what else I had to say or how else I could communicate that. And right before my little sister got married a couple summers ago, I had one that I was not quite to this point, but kind of close. And they must have taken off 2-3 inches of hair.
Oh.
And I just walked out and I was like, I was so disheartened. Because, here I am going to this wedding where I'm going to be, I was in the wedding and then I had to have pictures and it was not my finest moment. But it was frustrating because it was like, what do I have to understand visually to make this work? What am I missing? Is there something that if I were sighted, would this make more sense? And would I have the ability to ask for the things that I need better? And for the last couple of times I've gotten my haircut, it has not been a hairdresser. It's been the girlfriend and she's done a better job. So I just appreciate that is the way for me to go personally, because it hasn't been frustrating. So that's finding a person to do it that knows you and knows what you are looking for is a piece of advice I guess I would have if you're worried about that from a visual standpoint.
Yeah.
Really interesting, man. And there's really, you're kind of at the mercy of how they're interpreting the words that you're telling them when you're at the salon or at the barber shop. And so that actually brings up something else that we were talking about last week, and I'm kind of paraphrasing how you explained it to me, but just understanding the visual nuance as someone who can't see the way that most people see, providing the tools to understand what things look like. You gave us a good example of on our website using the alt descriptions to or the captions to describe the photos a little bit further, or other situations like that. But can you just describe a little bit more what you mean, and maybe if you have any examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that I didn't know. It's one of those things I didn't know that I didn't know when I started this out, because it's really hard to talk about this and not sound like, I'm not confident in myself. And that's not where I come from. But essentially the way that I explain this is, let's say that you had a friend from another country, right, that was going to come to let's use California, because you guys have, the surfer culture that exists, and there is surfer hair. In Minnesota, we have hockey hair.
Yes.
There are these nuances to hair that fit with lifestyles and with a way of life and a way of thinking. And people are very expressive of that. And, I could maybe tell you whether someone has short or long hair, visually, I mean, but beyond that, I mean, how you wear your hair, what does that signify? What does that mean? Those are things that I'm learning to understand and incorporate into how I think about things. So, I'm very interested in braids and, like the Viking kind of style of doing the different kinds of braids. And I want to find a metal hair ring. There's like it's almost like a napkin holder that you put in your hair, but it's like a metal ponytail. A lot of them have like Nordic patterns on them. I think that's interesting. But a lot of that for me comes from the idea of the thing more than the look that it's going to give me. I mean, it's probably going to look cool, I think. But it comes from understanding that you know, that look carries with it that, you know, Nordic style and that sort of thing, which I find fascinating and interesting from a historical perspective. But a lot of my research into like hairstyles and hair nuance is from the perspective of the idea of it. Where did it come from? Who created it? Who popularized it? What does it mean? Rather than that looks badass. Because yeah, I'm sure it does, but it's hard for me to catch that, you know, that angle.
What does looking badass mean? What does that mean? Looks badass.
Right. And I think it's something that whether you're blind or not, I think it's something that we all can take something from. Because for me, I walk around with a 5.5 foot tall white cane everywhere I go. And so people stare at me because that's something they've never seen before. So to me, if I grow out my hair and throw it up in a braid and whatever, people are going to stare at me whether I had a military, you know, short haircut or whether I have the long hair. And so if I feel empowered because I know that this is something I want to do and it's something that I feel like I'm going to, you know, have a good time with, I'm going to do it because people are going to stare at me no matter what that takes the form of. And so for me, that translates to like, well, yeah, then hell yeah, I'm going to do it. And I think for everybody else, you know, there's a lesson there in that, you know, people are going to judge you visually, whether you like it or not. People are going to take whatever message that they want to take from your hair or, you know, the way that you wear your hair, or the things that you wear with your hair. But if you're doing the things that you want to do and the idea of how that's all put together and how that presents itself is something that you're proud of, then, I mean, what better podcast are we on than to say, let it ride? That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Well said, dude.
Have you felt empowered by your hair as you've been growing it out and kind of getting a little bit more length, even maybe before the braid styles or trying some of this other stuff?
More recently, absolutely. I think I'm finally, I have been called ma'am a few times, which the first time it happened, I was like, haha, I've made it.
Yeah.
Because I am
good
able.
Sign.
Yeah. And like, it was a weird thing because it was such an out there, you know, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't, you know, feeling down on my hair that day or anything like that, but it happened. And I was like, you know what? That means I've finally gotten to the point where my hair is officially long in the eyes of someone who can see what's going on. And I will take that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And since getting into baseball and pitching, which I'm happy to talk about in a minute, but since getting into that and realizing again, there is like baseball hairstyles and there's some amazing dudes. You guys had Matt Strom on the podcast. I'm a big Ben Gamble fan. You got Josh Hader. You know, there are all these guys, especially pitchers, which I find fascinating.
Fernando Tatis Jr.
Yes, dude, on the cover of the show, which I knew, but I did not know that he had one of your hair ties on the cover. That is the most badass thing.
Crazy, blew
dude,
up.
That's amazing.
Speaking of Josh Hader, we have a package of hair ties inbound to his position. Actually, we have connections with Corbin.
Yeah.
And hopefully he's going to be able to, you know, hand a few things over to Josh Hader. But yes, our boy, Blake Fox El Zorro, as you know, I think, yeah, you're familiar with him. He was in the Brewers organization, but at any rate, he still has some connections there, and he's going to get those hair ties in the hands of a few of those long hairs, and hopefully we get him over to Gamble too. I mean, he's the heavy hitter over there.
Yeah, it's been amazing, and I think I was so bummed about the Brewers trading him to the Indians, but watching that, I think I'm watching that happen and realizing that I mean, I will not lie. A lot of the reason I follow Gamble and I love Ben Gamble is for the flow. He's just such a cool guy. He's so laid back. And he really embodies that long hair, ball player kind of vibe. And I love it. But he is so much fun to watch as a player. And I think it's made me a better baseball fan. And then to see guys, you know, all of these players around the league that have long hair, it's made me watch baseball a little differently in some ways, because it's like, wow, there is style here. There is something to be said for, again, that idea of the way that people present themselves, and the fact that long hair in professional baseball is becoming something that is not only very real for one or two guys anymore, but you can almost find a guy on every team somewhere that's got it. So
Oh yeah,
I like it. I like that it's catching on, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
totally, man. It's trendy. It's trendy right now.
Yes,
in MLB.
Hot. Hair
Hey,
is
and if your
hot.
hair
I mean,
ties
all-
can jump on that, we can get our man the
all
haterade.
sports. I mean, really, I'd say NBA is the only thing it's really kind of lacking it, but there's a few guys there, but nothing like hockey or football or baseball. This is just, you could throw on any game and you're going to see the flow.
Every
Yeah,
year,
living in
more
Minnesota
guys,
now,
too.
I didn't.
Yeah,
Every season,
Right.
more
Yeah.
guys.
totally.
Yeah,
So
living in Minnesota now, I was not aware how much hockey hair was a big thing.
Yeah.
And there are these YouTube videos that this guy used to make called the all hair hockey team.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
And-
dude.
Oh, man.
Hilarious.
They're-
Yes.
We've tried to replicate that with MLB. We think our guys have done a good job.
You guys have crushed that.
Yeah, it hasn't gone quite as viral as the hockey hair, unfortunately, but
But it needs to. If you have not seen those videos about the all hair MLB teams, go check them out. They're amazing.
Dude, sticking on the MLB, man. So one of your big dreams is to learn to throw a pitch. Now, I know you've done some extensive training and you've got some really cool instructors who've been working with you, and guys who've worked with some big time players and stuff. Am I right? What's this journey about? And tell us where you're at and where this is going.
Sure. So it's something that's been on my radar for a while. Last summer, I got the chance to go to batting cages with a couple friends of mine, and that went terribly. Could not hit a ball. I think I batted 66 was my batting average for the session, which, considering two of them, my two hits were probably foul balls anyway. I fit right into the stereotype of a pitcher. But the thing that amazed me is afterwards, some of my buddies were like, if you think about pitching, if you think about what the guys talk about in terms of pitching, it's about consistency and it's about muscle memory. Neither of those things is called keeping your eye on the ball. And the fact that this side of baseball that I love, I've been a baseball fan since I was about 9 years old. But the fact that this side of baseball exists where there might be something that isn't visual was so captivating to me. And I kind of had it in my head, like, I want to figure out how to pitch. And so I reached out locally here in February, and a post that I put in a group kind of blew up a little bit. And I got in touch with a guy named Mitch Brown. He used to pitch in the Cleveland Indians organization, which is amazing how that circles around to our long hair Ben Gamble. But really cool guy. And Mitch called me before our first training session, kind of said, hey man, like, I've been thinking about stuff, I have some ideas for how we can make things work and different things we can use as reference points. And Mitch is into biomechanics and it's all this stuff. And not for a second was it this awkward, over sensationalized, like, oh, you're blind, like, how is this going to work? Like, Mitch was so ready to jump in. And when the media, because I was in the local paper and a couple TV stations wanted in on it. And when those stories went out, it was almost disheartening to me, because it was like, oh, local blind man realizes dream of learning to pitch. And I was like, yes, that's part of it. I would be lying if I said I wasn't blind, and I would be lying if I said this isn't a dream I had. But it's not some big story. I just want to learn to pitch. I'm just happening to do this at 23 instead of 5. And so once the hype died down, I think it got easier for me to really get into it. I've been out there probably half a dozen times at this point doing some lessons. And I actually just put out a video that I'd made talking a little bit about this process. But I think, like I've said with other things, as cliche as it may sound, the long hair tying into my confidence and that tying into me wanting to learn to pitch and finding what that is and having the ability and the people and the resources to put that all together. My goal is to throw a strike 60 feet, 6 inches. I want to be able to throw from a mound to home plate. Maybe down the road, a first pitch at a ball game would be great. Yeah. But I want to actually be able to make it. I don't want it to be, oh, look, the poor blind kid tried I want it to be a first pitch.
You want
I
to throw
want
some
it to be
gas.
He
down
fired
the
a
hill.
strike right down the pipe
Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
with a little tailing fastball, a little cut movement to it.
Yeah.
Some
Something
sauce.
that
Yeah.
moves in a direction that's not down.
Yeah. Snap in the catcher's glove.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Have you heard that pop with some of the throws you've been doing in the glove?
Just the last time I went, I was able to play a little bit of catch. Got about 2 or 3 that I, not regulation distance. I think we're about 30 feet right now. But I'm working on consistency, and velocity will come later when I can, make that distance farther. But right now it's about finding that arm action, finding, where I need to be with my body at different points in the delivery. And the process of learning that is so rewarding and so much fun. So I'm having fun, and I'm looking forward to getting back to it pretty soon here.
That's awesome. Is your left eye, can you hone it? Can you see the catcher?
Yeah.
Like when you're up there? Okay.
And the interesting thing to me about pitching is I was fortunate enough to go to a school for the blind in Wisconsin growing up. And one of the things that I learned from some of the staff there is that sometimes actually learning a skill without vision is better, because you're not relying on, my vision may be inconsistent, or, something may change for me, a year or 2 from now.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so if I learn to pitch without relying on my eyesight at all, it will mean that I can still pitch at that same level, even if I lose the vision.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying as much as I can to pitch without relying on the eyesight, because I want to be able to continue to do this.
It's 19 hours.
Oops, sorry, my computer likes to yell.
All good.
But yeah, so that's where that's at. If that makes
Awesome.
sense.
How about some other athletics like running, for example, or not necessarily sports, but just exercise, being out there? Have you been able to learn, or like weightlifting, for example? Have you gotten into any other stuff?
So I did, a few sports in high school. I did swim. I did track and field. The ironic part of this is, with the blind, there's a lot of adaptations made to some sports. And so for track and field, there's a sport called the tandem run. And essentially it's where you're running with one person who has slightly more vision than the other, and you're tethered together by a 2 or 3 foot tether, and you run together. And it's kind of a guided run. And the scary part is, for a while, I was the more sighted of the people in the pair, which probably shouldn't. It's the equivalent to like giving a blind guy a driver's license. Probably slightly dangerous. But so I did a little bit of that. Other sports, I did swim. Swim was hard because there's no point of reference when you're in water. And so you end up sometimes swimming off at some weird angle, no matter how hard you try to straighten yourself out.
Yeah.
So I pushed some lane markers pretty good during my swim career. Bowling, I've done bowling. Bowling is like pitching. You have to be consistent, and you have to find a delivery that works.
Yeah.
And that's another one that I tried not to rely on the vision. I relied on points that I could orient myself and like go straight on. And then make a pitch, or make a throw that always followed through, by the ear. So yeah, that's a couple things I've done. I did a 5K. That was a time. I need to train more if I'm going to do more of that.
Yeah. Now, dude, when it comes to tying your hair, kind of similar questions to sports, but what's your go-to tie-ups, and how are you been learning that process?
So that's an interesting one, because it's one that I'm still working on, so to speak. I always keep, I think like so many of us, I got hair ties on the wrist here.
Nice.
And yes, and it's just about, finding the same point to tie back. So, finding that, it's muscle memory. You guys have talked about it in some of your videos as well. And it's about just knowing where you need to be. Braiding is my next challenge.
Nice.
I can do, what are they called? Fishtail
Braids. Yeah.
I can do those. I can't do any other kind of braids. I can't do, your standard 3-strand yet. I got to work on that.
Okay.
But I usually go men's tail, high ball, It kind of depends what I'm doing, but those are the main two. And then I've done the fishtail braids a couple times. I need a little more length because I've got some layers going on. So the fishtails like to unfishtail themselves after a little while. So I'm looking forward to the next 3-4 months when I can get some more length and get those going. But it really is. It's about feel. If I wanted to right now get this going, it's just a matter of like knowing where the hairs on your head are, where the point is that they all need to meet.
Yeah.
So that things can go okay. And we'll do a bit of a.
You know what I'm liking watching you do this is kind of your approach and how how your hands are flipped like upside down versus just how I would do it. I think there's probably people who do it like you're doing it, but
Sure.
that's good to see. It's a good way to grab everything underneath without easily missing it.
Sure. Well, you're right. And that's one of the things that I initially really struggled with was that ability to, put things together in a way that was cohesive enough not to lose hairs. And that took some getting used to. But
nice. Look at that. Balling, dude.
Oh yeah.
Looks great.
Dude, yeah.
Killer. So, we talk about it often. It's just like there's a lot of hair problems, a lot of like annoyances and stuff. What have been some of the ones for you that really drive you nuts?
More recently, the hair just getting in the food. Or interfering when I'm trying to eat. That's a thing. I wear a backpack for work because I do childcare, so I have a first aid kit that's attached to my backpack. So very often when we go outside, I go to grab the backpack and I sling it over one shoulder and flinch because it's yanking my hair. And the first couple times it happened, I was like, yes, like I hit that milestone where it's getting in the way of the backpack. That novelty wears off real quick.
That is cool.
So yeah, those are the big two. And other than that, I mean, wind, man, wind.
The wind will get you.
Yep, it'll get us all. I think we can all unite, no matter what anybody else believes in. A windy day, man.
It's a real pain in the ass.
Yes, sir.
Hey, you mentioned there are a few other visually impaired or blind guys in the Facebook group and in the community. How many guys or
and how did you know
we
or
weren't
how
really aware of previously, but
Yeah.
I mean we're thrilled to know that these guys are hanging.
Well, I can't say we've seen each other out at a bar or anything like that. But so there was one guy that posted a couple weeks ago and mentioned it in his post, and then there was someone that commented on his post kind of saying, hey, I'm also legally blind. And so there's those two guys that I've seen for sure. And there may be others. I think there are, for a long time when I jumped on the Facebook group, I kind of passively observed for a while because I was not exactly shy, but I wasn't sure how to phrase my questions about, how to navigate this stuff from a blind perspective. And I think that can be something that's kind of challenging. And I think that knowing that there's other guys out there, it's like, oh man, if you're waiting, for some kind of information, reach out, man, ask myself, put out questions in the group. I will say that there's a couple of guys. So I try to describe my photos outside of alt text. So alt text is just a way to describe photos where it's embedded in the picture. So if you have vision, you won't see it. But I tried to describe mine in the post because I'm trying to kind of bring it forward that some people may need those image descriptions. But if you have questions, I mean, there's people in this group that have learned to do image descriptions, when they make posts about, a new hairstyle they're trying or a new product they've got a question about. And so just seeing the support that I've gotten and that so many others have dished out in the community over the last couple of years that I've been a part has been amazing. And so I really appreciate that. And I just want to say that, like, if you're looking for information, if you are, blind or visually impaired in the community, like, we're here for you, man.
Heck yeah, dude. Now, just so maybe everybody can get better at this, we live in this digital world. Everything is screens and phones, and just like, seems like we live in a world where vision is even more like, I guess not
relied upon.
Or and I'm not even saying all this stuff is good for us, but like everything's so visually heavy, and how are you using these apps? How are you reading websites, watching YouTube videos? Walk us through what that is, and how do you do it?
And how digital creators like us can make
be
it better.
Yeah.
Which
Sure.
we talked about a little bit, but you get the idea.
Yeah, so for a lot of people with visual impairments, there are different ways that people access things. So some people can use like a screen magnifier, and then they look at the same things everybody else does, and they do it all visually. They just need to make it bigger.
Okay.
For me, I use something called a screen reader a lot of the time, and essentially what this does is it puts any text on the screen into speech form. And so, for example, in a post, if you have text in that post, it'll read the text. But if you share an image, unless you describe the image, sometimes it will try to generate a description on Facebook or something like that. But generally speaking, that image is just kind of read aloud as, hey, they shared, 13 photos in this post. It's like, okay, well, that's great. But what are those 13 photos,
Yeah.
And even if you don't want to describe them all, just say, hey, different pictures of our photo shoot. We were out at, like the one you guys just took. We were out at the beach. There was something about dinosaurs in there.
Yeah.
I didn't get a lot of I was going off of what people were saying in the video more than what things were looking like, but trying to describe the main, the who, what, when, where, why, how of your picture. And you don't have to write a novel, but give me a sense of what's going on. If there's a new pack of hair ties that are being teased in the picture, say, hey, these ones are, they look like this. Here's the, I'm trying to think of a pack that, I have the blues. I like the blues. I'm a blue guy. So just saying, hey, these hair ties, come in different shades of blue, ranging from like a light, sky blue all the way to a dark navy blue. I have one of those. Like
Yeah.
But yeah, I think trying to get a sense for it's hard to know what to describe too, because I don't always know when someone asks me, how do I describe something? It's like, man, that's a hard question, because really the question that you're asking at that point is what's important, what needs to be relayed. And one of the things that I think I was talking to probably both of you guys about is like, you guys have a brand in the Longhairs. You guys, this is what you do. You have everything that you do fits into the way that you reach out to your community. And when you describe your images, don't be afraid to include that, and that's advice I'd have for anybody. If you have a brand, if you have something you want to say it in your descriptions. Don't just say, a black hair tie. It's a sick black hairband for any occasion.
Yeah.
For highballing it and men's tailing it.
Yeah, man, totally. Yeah, that's phenomenal. And really all the platforms give you the ability to add alt text too, like even Instagram does to your images.
Right. And Instagram used to be completely like inaccessible. I still don't have an Instagram, but I know now it's getting better.
Yeah, okay.
That whole thing is just extremely insightful and something that could be easy to just gloss over or not really think about much.
Yeah.
But honestly, even from a writer's perspective, is really a fun challenge to consider. And when you think about how can you describe something in words with no visual aspect to it.
Yeah.
How can you describe what something looks like? And it actually is, I look at it as a really fun and interesting challenge. And we had an exercise in our team building retreat back in January, where we're all verbally describing various shapes or patterns on a page, and the other people are supposed to draw it.
Yeah.
And you can really see at the end how much of that was translated and how it was interpreted and how someone heard. Just a lesson in communication, but it's extremely insightful. It's something that a lot of digital creators, including ourselves, could easily overlook, and yet it's worth it to take a little bit of extra time and really just try to create that experience, that same consistent experience across all of our, whether it's written or video or audio or whatever.
Absolutely.
or visual.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. I was just going to say the thing that I tell people about accessibility is, yes, it has this front facing view of being, you're making the thing for the blind or the thing for the deaf. But here's the thing. Most of that stuff is going to help everybody in some way, because maybe you're just a person who does better at picturing things when you read them. Maybe in a video or something like that, there's something you missed that if you have a description of something, maybe that adds to your experience too. And so I think it really fills out space that people don't necessarily always think about needing filling out because, you assume those gaps are accounted for. But any accessibility measure that you incorporate anywhere into anything you do really can help everybody. So it's a win-win-win.
It's phenomenal, dude. Great feedback. And for sure, we know we can, make a lot of improvements in this region for sure. I mean, when I look at our blog, we've almost like looked at our, I've always known that alt text is more for accessibility than it is for like SEO or anything like that. But as like we've gone, further in content creation and stuff, like we kind of have had a strategy of like adding the alt tags and stuff more for like SEO and to show up during image searches and stuff like that, which
Exactly.
It works because when you type these certain things in, it's like we take over the whole Google image search, which is what our intention is. But having more of a approach to accessibility would just spice all those things up. And like what El Rubio's saying here is, adding the voice and some character in there. Not that it has to be so long. One point that I think the exercise we did at the staff retreat just totally spoke on was when you said that, now you're really asking yourself, what do I need to communicate here that's the most important? And because when you don't think about what the exercise we did at our staff retreat was, people would go off on tangents and start ripping off all these confusing things. And then like everyone's confused. And then they're like, wait, hold on, stop. Let me start over. And then, so it is a lot harder than you think initially.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the things that like, it's a skill. And I think this applies to so much stuff, but like, these are all things that you don't need to know about them until you need to know about them, right? Like accessibility for me is something I wake up and I work with in some facet or other every single hour of my life because I have to by circumstance. But for you guys and for a lot of people who are watching or listening to this podcast, this is maybe something you've never thought about before. And people are always like, wow, that's amazing. And it's like, okay, it's all relative, right? And I hope, my goal in anything like this is just to make you think about it.
Yeah.
I'm not here to be aggressive and be angry because there's plenty of that going around the world as it is. I'm here to learn how to pitch, learn how to tie my hair, learn how to put all that together and become a functional human being. And if I help some people along the way doing that, or bring some more people into this community or strengthen the way that people are thinking about this kind of stuff, I'll take that as an added bonus.
Dude, phenomenal, man. Well, you're crushing it, man. And you're very well spoken and very clear in your communication. It's great to chat. I have a question about when you talk about accessibility, and if you've seen this on some other websites, like, because I've been starting to see it more and more, there's kind of like this accessibility button and you like press it and then it kind of gives you these options. Do you know what I'm talking about? And do you have any thoughts on that? And do you think that could be something helpful for us, or should we do it a different way?
Absolutely. I mean, the thing that I suggest a lot of the time is, yes, have that accessibility option, but have a lot of times now, sorry, I'm not a tech guy, but the more options you can give somebody about, let's just take contrast, for example. Personally, my favorite way to read, if I have to read visually, is white text on a black background. And so with your blog posts, my phone will pop up automatically with a mode that I can do that. I can switch my colors to read the blog posts with that preferred color. But like someone else might prefer black text on a yellow background, which I know sounds like that would hurt your eyes, but for some people, it lets them keep track of things better. And so having the more options you can give somebody, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that really actually folds into the hair stuff for me, because the more options I have in terms of understanding the way that like a certain style is conveyed or what something is used for, the more ideas someone can give me about, here's how to do this style, here's what it looks like, and here's how people think about it, then I have that in my toolbox, right? I can use that for something. And I think the same thing applies to accessibility as a whole, and it applies to hair. So win-win.
Phenomenal.
Chris, man, I was just going to say exactly what Lynn said, El Moreno said a moment ago. Just you're extremely articulate in your command of language. It's clear that you've really honed that skill in over the time, not having the vision aspect of it. And I've noticed you said several times throughout our conversation, this is how I explain things to people. And you have a thoughtful approach towards how to help people understand what you are communicating in the best way that you have in your toolbox that's available to you. And whether you're visually impaired or hearing impaired or have all of your senses, that's an excellent skill to develop, of being able to communicate what it is, the true intent of your communications. And you're really exceptional at delivering it, man. And it gives us a lot to be more aware of and just be more mindful, and some tools that we have in our toolbox to improve our accessibility and putting our content out there in a way that lots more people can enjoy it in different ways. And just having the insight and perspective is a really excellent opportunity to have you on the show, man.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I appreciate you guys having me on. I mean, me taking time to put language together is probably a lot better use of my time than me taking up, I don't know, sports car driving. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I one more question. Just having gone to a school for the blind, it strikes me as having really been a big addition to your, I mean, that sounds like it was a very valuable experience to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of what that gives. So I also went to a lot of summer camps growing up that were specifically for the blind. And whether it was for the camps or for the school, when you're in an environment where you can be around people like you in some form or fashion, for a week, a summer, growing up, I wasn't the blind kid anymore. I was just one of 150 kids at this summer camp. And we all told stories about how we would, run into poles or, mess with our vision teachers or whatever. And it was like we were just normal and able to compare those experiences. And I think finding that sense of community is so important to becoming confident in who you are. And the fact that I found that growing up in my summer camps and then in the school for the blind, I found that within the blindness community. And I found that here with the hair community. I think it's so incredibly important to find a community of people who, even if they don't think exactly in the same way that you do, if there's some rallying point that you can all get around, and especially if you have the chance to meet those people in person and talk to them, that's one of the most powerful experiences that you can have. And for me, that's where the great cut comes in, is like, that's my chance to meet so many of you guys who have made that impact on me and on so many other people, and really spend some time in chat in person and kind of have that community-centric experience that is about the hair donation. It's about the community. It's about being out in California. And it's about all of that at the same time. And that is what those experiences are about. And that's what I look for, whether it's in the blind community or beyond it.
Well, man, you are in a group of guys who are very similar to you from the standpoint of the length of our hair. And we're pumped to have you in the community, man, and stoked we got to have you on the show today. Do you have any, you mentioned that you do not have an Instagram, but if guys want to connect with you, I know you're very active on the Facebook group. Are there any other links or handles or anything else where someone could connect with you if they're listening in?
Yeah, so my Facebook and the Facebook group is just Chris Mathews, and then I do have a YouTube channel called Blind Over Matter, and there is where I've started posting some things about the baseball. I've done some music covers and things like that. So if that's something people want to check out, feel free. So nice. I'm looking forward to meeting more people. That's one of my favorite parts of being in the Facebook group and things like that is getting the chance to talk to people. So feel free to say hello. I don't bite.
Blind Over Matter. That's great on YouTube.
Chris, thank you for the inspiration and the ideas for us to get better, and we are going to do it.
Hey, I appreciate you guys, and keep doing the things that you do. I think maybe more than you think. You guys are helping out a lot of different things in a lot of different ways, even if you're your main focus is hair. I think you guys extend beyond it very well. And that let it lie. That let's try that again. It's Monday. We're gonna finish strong here. That let it ride moniker that you guys have with you is such a multifaceted piece.
Yeah.
And it's about being who you are. And I appreciate that. I can do that. You guys can do that, and we can all do it at the same time. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, you guys heard it here. He's going to be at the Great Cut 2024, throwing it down with the boys. He is El Ciego.
Yeah.
He's letting it ride. Thanks for joining us, man. Had a great time hanging out. And until next time, Longhairs, keep letting it ride.